Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. Mother Teresa. You're listening to the Real Estate Investor Show, episode number 21.
Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
We are thrilled to have Lynn Currie on today's show. Lynn is a seasoned home builder specializing in spec and custom builds in Austin, Texas. In 2010, she transitioned from exclusively investing in real estate to sponsoring and constructing real estate investment projects, after leaving a highly successful career as owner and entrepreneur in a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. On today's episode, we talk about how to make your first deal a successful one, how to avoid bad partnerships, and the key systems that keeps her multiple construction projects running smoothly. Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz and...
This is Andressa. How are you?
Doing well, Andressa. How are you doing?
Doing great. The weather, is great outside, so that always inspires me.
Oh, I know. And I actually, I started the day, I wanted to share this quickly before we jump into our wonderful guest that we have. But I started the day listening. I've been really committed to meditating every morning. And the days I do it, life seems to work. And the days I don't, life goes down another path. But anyway, this morning was all about surrendering. And I thought, what a great topic for the day. And I feel like, I don't know if this is as a person, as a woman, someone in business, someone that's balancing a lot, but I want to control a lot. I don't say that, but really that's what ends up happening. And I'm just like, gotta surrender. So I'm trying to be in action, have a productive day, but also be in this like sense of like being in like kind of like this sense of peace around it. So it's an interesting feeling for me because I'm usually always in action mode, but I'm really being cognizant today and this week about surrendering, letting go a little bit. So that's what's up for me. It's hard work though.
Yeah, no, it's funny. The one of the books that I'm reading right now, you actually sent that to me. The Universe Has Your Back.
Oh, I forgot I sent that to you.
Oh, yes.
I got to send it to myself.
Really, it talks about surrendering and is an exercise. It's truly an exercise to, tell the universe what's your blueprint, and the universe has to do the job to get it to you.
I should have. When I send you books, I should probably send myself the same book. But anyway, that's awesome. Well, we're going to get into a great interview. We have Lynn Currie. How are you, Lynn?
I am great. How are you guys?
Good, doing well. We're really looking forward to this interview with you. Lynn's going to get into. She's a home builder and a real estate extraordinaire. She's going to get into all of that. But we love to kind of start the interviews, Lynn. For the women listening, everyone's journey is so unique. And, everyone kind of starts in this business and gets going in very different ways. So love to hear from you. What compelled you? What inspired you to get involved in real estate investing?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, like most of us. I don't know that I still know what I want to be when I grow up, but I found myself, so I have a photojournalism degree. So basically I could have gotten out of college and take pictures. And I really wasn't that good of a photographer. I'm still not. I'm capable, but I'm just not that great. And so I kind of went through college. I got this degree. I knew I didn't want to work in that field, and kind of went off and started my career elsewhere. But all through college, I was reading these real estate investing books, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this guy named Robert Allen, that probably a lot of people know who he is. And all of that made sense to me. I was very interested in it growing up. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and we would move every 2 or 3 years. And my parents would go into wherever we were moving into, buy some dumpy house, fix it up, make a lot of money, sell it, or not make a lot of money, but sell it, make more money than they bought it for, and then just kind of rinse and repeat everywhere we went. So I understood the finances of that. So when I got out of college, I figured my path was going to be somehow through real estate. And so I very quickly bought my first house. It had been actually a rental that my father owned. I went in and fixed it up, lived in it for a couple of years, rented it out, started doing the same thing with the next one, and started building up a small rental portfolio. Quickly learned that I didn't want to manage rental properties. Fast forward several years, and I had started a business, and we needed office space, and we went in and we actually purchased some office condo units in a development that was being built, and then started kind of moving through doing that, and now own a few office properties. Those are better than residential rentals, by the way, when it comes to the management of them, at least for me. And always knew I was going to try to make my escape and go full time into real estate. I owned a marketing agency with 2 business partners, and was about to make the leap in late 2007. And then 2008 happened. And most of us remember that was painful for the economy. So had to kind of step back and make the decision not to make the jump right then, because there was barely a jump to make. Went back, started kind of refocused on the agency. And then in 2010, got a call from a friend who also owned an agency, and both of us always dreamed of escaping together, and said, "Hey, we need to go have a glass of wine. I need to show you something." And went and had a glass of wine with her. And she put a spreadsheet in front of me about this kind of model of building 2 homes on 1 lot. And the spreadsheet was basically the finances of it, and said, "This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to make your transition." And I said, "That's fantastic. I don't know how to build a house." And she said to me, "Well, Dawn Moore, who was her business partner at the time, is going to teach you." And Dawn's background was as a project manager in an architect's office, and she had started building under this model. And so she basically took me under her wing, taught me how to do it. Within 30 days, I had a piece of property under contract and started building. So that was the first one, and that's how I did it. And then I kind of straddled the line and held 2 jobs for that first year or so while I was learning. And then after I sold the first 2 houses, I decided to just go. So I basically handed the keys to the agency and signed over my interest in the company to my business partners, and off I went.
There we go. So Lynn, for the ladies that are listening to us out there and they're thinking the same thing that you thought when your friend handled that deal to you, "I don't know how to build a house. I don't even know what to ask a contractor about what he needs to do. How can I estimate the rehab?" What would you tell her?
Ask every question possible to everybody you can find. I mean, I was lucky in the sense that I had a really close friend that I trusted, who knew the finances, and she handed me the spreadsheet with all the numbers. Now I'll say the numbers were not correct, but they were, they were a framework. And I actually went down the path. So I decided at the beginning, pretty early on, that I was not going to hire somebody to be the general contractor. In Texas, we can do that. In most cities in Texas, and in Austin specifically, we can do that. So I decided that I was actually going to learn the process as opposed to hiring a general contractor to go run the job. And my logic was that if I was going to do this and be successful, I needed to know how to do it. And I had done the math and realized that I would have had to make a lot of really expensive mistakes to not get my money back out of it. So if I could do this and break even and pay back every dime that I had to borrow to do it, even if I didn't make money on it, I was ahead, and that's where I wanted to be. And I got lucky. I didn't lose money on it, and I made money on it. But that was my logic in it. And then every time one of my subcontractors and my trades came on the job site, I was there. I asked them what they were doing. I paid attention. Any inspector that was ever on site, I followed them around and asked them questions. I just, decided to be as much of a sponge as I could and learn as much as I could at the time. And I mean, and that process just keeps going. I mean, today I learn things today.
Yeah. It doesn't stop. I mean, for that first project, did you do any additional education outside the actual project, courses or anything like that? Or was it really hands-on talking to the subs? I mean, I'm just curious, in terms of a educational perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I would read and search things on the internet mostly. I picked up a couple books, but all practical knowledge was on-site, hands-on.
Yeah.
And I will put in there that I think it's important to say that I inherited all my subs from this friend of mine. And so I already knew that they were solid, good, trusted guys. I wasn't having to go out there and, try to find a plumber who wasn't going to do the job right.
Yeah.
I knew they were going to come do the job right. So for me, most of the initial learning was more on project and budget management.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
And what were some big learnings for you on that? I mean, because, it's all about managing money and managing, right, the team. So
yeah,
what were your big ahas or learnings that you take with you now with every custom build you do?
I think I've gotten more sophisticated in my management of it. At the beginning, it was like drinking through a fire hose. I mean, I can still go back and read through the notes that I took and just kind of laugh at,
I like that
wow.
visual, drinking through a fire hose. I'm like,
yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, that's
Yes.
intense.
Yeah, that's totally
feels like that sometimes. Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm constantly tweaking my systems at this point. Now I started with handwritten notes, and then I moved to a spreadsheet, and now I actually use an online system, a commercial SAS system, software as a service system, and I've got Gantt charts and that sort of thing. And I think that the best thing you can do is be highly organized and know what the next few steps are, because in this business, time is money. And if if it's time to install the faucets and I don't have them on site, I've lost money because I've lost time, and it's just going to cost me more. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is learning how to manage the project. On the budget side, I work with multiple lenders. So there's usually a little tweaking and kind of filling in on their systems as well. But there's also kind of a method to that. And there are certain lenders that I just won't work with because they cause too many delays on my end and too many issues on my end. And it means that my business runs inefficiently because I'm doing multiple projects at any given time. I am not the bank. There's a reason I'm using banks. So if they're asking me to float too much of my own money, I get really unwilling to do that and won't use that lender.
That's a kind word, unwilling. I get pissed off.
Well, I mean that too, but at some point there's only so much you can do. So you
totally
cut your life losses.
Yes.
You work within the boundaries the best you know how, and
absolutely
move through and decide that that's not something you're going to do again.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I'm all about systems. I like my all the projects that I'm running right now. It's always constantly thinking, how can I improve this so I can move in a schedule that is not going to cost me at the end. So I'm curious to know what softwares, what apps, what systems do you have in place right now that not just you, but your team uses to move the project along?
Yeah, so software wise, if you step outside of the whole, Microsoft Office suite or Google suite, which we use, of course, a lot just for random things.
Yes.
So I use a software called Coconstruct to manage the building of the houses. And I do both specs and customs. And I actually brought it in when I started doing customs because it makes it easier for me to manage and work with custom clients. So I use that, and that helps manage timelines, selections, budget. That's the core of my system. And then my bookkeepers use QuickBooks, but everybody knows what QuickBooks is and why they use it. And then kind of an interim that I use between the two, I use Expensify, which is actually a software built for small companies and maybe large companies too, to do expense reports. And I have kind of tweaked it a little to do all of my invoicing and draw requests. So invoicing to clients that aren't using banks, draw requests to my banks, because it makes it really easy to manage both the receipts and the classifications of the expenses, and create really simple reports. I mean, I think I pay $6 to $7 a month for it, and it is probably the highest value for the dollar that I've got in any of my software.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, your decision you mentioned earlier too, Lynn, about deciding to become the general contractor, right, yourself, so to speak. And you said that, it was a pretty easy process. You guys don't have to get a certain license, or do you have to get a license in where you are? Okay.
No, we don't have licensing.
So that was something that you just decided to do early on, and you really learned the business inside and out as a result, which was great. Now you continue to do that. For women that are, listening to this and they're thinking of, they're going to be hiring a general contractor, right? It crosses many of our paths, whether you're flipping a house or potentially custom building a house as well, new construction. What would you say to them as they vet their contractors and their team? I'm curious to get your even subs. It's like what are some like musts that we have to kind of, so to speak, how do we really make sure we're getting the right team together?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the trickiest part of this job. I think the biggest thing is to just get recommendations and as far as for the subs and the trades. So at least that whoever you start working with, somebody else has been happy with them. And in this business, you're probably not going to find somebody that everybody's happy with. There's a lot of moving parts.
That's
and
a great point.
A lot of controlled chaos in this business.
I like that.
So there's some of it that's just personality driven. And then I think the second thing is complete clarity in pricing and contracts. And a lot of these guys, at least here, there aren't contracts. There's your guy's going to come in and lay the tile, and he's going to tell you he's going to charge you, $4 a foot, $6 a foot to lay the tile, and you let him walk in and do it. And you're thinking, okay, I had this one room, it was 100 by 100, and he's going to come in and say, oh, but I used, okay, now I just killed myself on math. But I meant to say it's 100 square feet. But he really opened 150 square feet worth of boxes. And then you get the invoice and you say, well, wait a minute, the room was only 100 square feet and you charge me for 150. And he's like, well, that's the materials. And, and then when he said that was what was included, what wasn't included. So I think it's just just absolute clarity of what they're going to do, how they're going to charge you, agree on the price up front, make sure back to what's included, the inclusions and the exclusions, so that you just know.
That's so important.
What gets most people.
Yeah, I think that one thing that you mentioned right now, and I learned that very recent, is just that I don't need to just write down what includes. I need to know what is he excluding or he or she is excluding, because I don't know what I don't know in certain areas. And if I'm asking them if it is included or not, all of that needs to be on paper, because we will figure that out, that it was not included right after, right? It's always after.
Right. When the bill comes, and I've gotten to where I make it absolutely clear that anything they do that's out of scope, if they want to get paid for it, they have to get my approval first. And that's not how a lot of these folks will work. And a lot of times it's them being nice. It needed to be done. They didn't want to hold up the job. They knew you wanted it done. So they went in and just did it. And then you get the bill and it's different than you expected. And, sometimes it's, an extra $100 and you go, okay, that's fine. But what if it's not? And it's also, it almost sets a business precedent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For the custom building, I'm very curious about that. How do you deal with your clients? Because it's a very thin line between making sure they're satisfied, but at the same time, sometimes you have people that change their mind all the time, and they will delay the project, and at the end, the price is going to be a little different. How do you handle those situations?
A lot of documentation. So yeah, it goes back to kind of the same process where. And these were some hard lessons for me to learn, where you start and in my mind, I thought I was being easy to work with and the nice guy when they would make a change and we'd be, oh yeah, we can take care of it. We can take care of it. And what that does is set a precedence that everything kind of works that way. So what I've learned is that I'm happy to make as many changes as they want. And I don't charge for all of the changes. It just if it changes the scope significantly, I will charge for it. But if it's, hey, we said we wanted this faucet, but we really want this faucet, and it didn't change anything, I'm not going to charge them extra for it if we haven't installed it and all that good stuff. But what's important is to still document that and have them sign off on it, because then they start getting used to There's a process, and everything has to be signed off on. And if it costs more, they have to sign off on that cost right then and there. And it tells them that it's outside of their budget. And it's that kind of diligence. And with me, that's not really my personality. So I've had to hire out for that, because it's something that's very difficult for me to manage the paperwork side of it. So I have supplemented my talents with somebody else.
It's a great point though, Lynn. I mean, first off, you said something really great. You said, we often do teach people how to treat us. And, it's something we really all have to be mindful of. And you're right, you're kind of creating this, okay, this is how this is going to go. So kind of nipping it in the bud is a great point. In terms of the documentation, so you actually have someone that helps you with that, or do you have like some sort of online way that the signatures happen, or what? I'm curious how you've automated that, or how you've kind of, supplemented, so to speak, to use your word.
Yeah, so it is built into the software that I use.
Okay.
To do that. You can do change orders, and you can do, it's a basic form that you're filling out, and you can decide whether there's a cost associated with it or not. And all the signatures are electronic.
Got it.
The challenge is, from the field, I can't really do the change orders on my phone. You need the computer. And so for me, it's just easier to call back to the office and say, hey, I need a change order done. Let's get it done and get it in their hands. And I like to get it in their hands within 5 or 10 minutes, because we've just done this and we've just agreed on it, and we can get them to sign it in 5 or 10 minutes. All is good. Whereas if I, go back to the office or send it to somebody who sits on it for 24 hours and then it goes out, it could be there's just some confusion in it, or the delays start causing more delays. And a lot of times it could be that the trade is right there on the job site doing something. And if I don't get that signed off on immediately, then they have to come back and it causes delays.
Okay, great. And you mentioned about your personality and hiring somebody that has a different personality. Liz and I always talked about it, how different we are, but how complementary we are. And I want to ask you about your team and how did you build them, and what type of personalities were you looking for to build your power team?
Yeah. So when in my younger days, I've owned my own company since, I guess I started my first one at about 28. So back then I tried to do everything. And I would also put a lot of time and focus and effort on the things that I wasn't good at. And it took me a long time in my life to kind of make that switch and figure out that I no longer was going to try to do the things that I was not good at. I was going to actually let somebody else do them and hire them for those skills. So other than skill sets, I always hire somebody who I just like personally, because I'm going to be spending a lot of time with them. I've only got 3 full-time folks. So it's a small organization. And then of course I've got my trades, they come in and out. Mm-hmm. But I think working with people that you like and that you trust and can count on is incredibly important. And then other than that, it's a skill set more than a experience in the industry. So both of the guys, I've got a bookkeeper. So, and then in addition to that, I've got two guys, and neither of them came from this industry. One of them actually was a bartender, and he was looking to get out of that business. And he's kind of my site foreman. He takes care of all the job sites and makes sure that they're cleaned and that everybody has what they need, and locks them and unlocks them and that sort of thing. He is a good guy and completely reliable. He'll answer my texts, answer my calls, just take care of things. And he doesn't always know how to do something, but he's always willing to learn, and he'll always figure it out, or hopefully figure it out, but come close to figuring it out. And then my other guy, who's more of a project manager, he actually earlier had worked in procurement at a large commercial construction firm, but that really wasn't what he did. Super task oriented, and whatever drops in his lap, he's one of those guys that manages it right then and right there. And I knew that was part of the personality that I needed, because I have a tendency, I'm a little bit more, I don't even know how to say this nicely about myself, but I tend to put things off sometimes, especially if I don't want to do them, whereas he's like, well, even if I didn't want to do it, the best way to get it off my desk is to do it right then and there. And so as we started working together, I just learned I could hand anything off to him, and I know he'll get it taken care of, or he'll just tell me if he can't, or he doesn't know how, or if he needs something else. And that sort of reliability that we can both count on each other is almost everything for me.
That's great. In terms of so how many projects at once, Lynn, do you have going on? Like,
usually between 6 and 8.
Okay, 6 and 8. And that could be, are those like multiple properties on one lot, or that's just 6 or 8 homes, or 6 or 8?
Yeah, all of the above possibly.
All the above.
So sometimes I'll have two houses on one lot.
Okay.
I usually have under construction, so vertical construction coming out of the ground, where I've got crews, 6 or so. And then the other, like right now I actually have 6 under construction, and I've got 3 others going on. I've got one that's about to go into permitting. I've got one that the architect is working on it right now. And then I've got another one that I'm doing a subdivide. So that's in city paperwork.
Gotcha. All different stages, but nonetheless, it's, quite a bit. You got your team. I'm curious too, to get into like part of our kind of mission here, and part of what we're doing in this podcast and this, this community we're building, is to talk about, you're kind of like creating that balance, right? And I know that, there's a lot of articles like there's no such thing as balance, and we can get into that whole philosophy, but really we seek balance. I think people do seek balance. I think people, or at least me and Andressa, as we launch this podcast, we seek balance, but you have ambitions, you have goals, you've started multiple businesses. You're someone who's growing, right? I would imagine, right? In your business and what you're up to. So how do you keep it all kind of together in terms of, taking care of yourself? Like what are some things you do for yourself? Because you gotta be really over, busy, and you got a lot on your plate and what you're up to. So I'm curious for you, what keeps you kind of grounded, and what are some of your recipe for your own personal success?
Yeah. So, I think the first thing is I refuse to work 80-hour weeks. I just flat out won't do it. I know in my business that I could push, and these houses would get built faster. And I would be very unhappy, and the people around me would be very unhappy. So I think the first and foremost, I just take the time that I want for myself to live the life that I want to live. I try not to work weekends. I will if something comes up that absolutely has to be handled. And honestly, it helps having staff and guys working with me, because we can trade off. If I'm out of town, Daniel can take care of it, who's my site man or my project manager. And if he's out of town, I can take care of something. But I think there's things in my life that I like to do and I want to go do it. And the only way to do it is to take the time to do it. That's just as simple as it gets. And there's always going to be enough to do that if I want to work more hours, I can work more hours. My website is, I think I've got 2 pages on my website, and it's been that way for a year and a half. And, I used to build websites for a living. I really should have a better website, but that takes time, and it's not my priority, and it does the job. And it's kind of that, great is the enemy of good is the quote, right? So it works. It does what it needs to do. And I'll get to it, I don't know, on a rainy day when I can't go out and build houses.
There you go. That's great. I'm always curious to know what's next. We always have like the never ending to-do list. And another day I was asking a friend about what does she think about my goals. And she was like, I thought you achieved them. And I was like, well, I have new ones. So it's always, recycling and pushing a little bit higher. So for you, Lynn, what's next for you?
So I'm actually really happy with my business right now. And I'll just say on the home building side, I'm kind of in version 2 of my business. I had a business partner for a while and we split, and I've spent the last 2 years kind of getting to where I am now. And in that time, I've started working, I've got investors, so I raise capital and that sort of thing. And so part of my what's next is also in the path that I'm taking my investors. In what I do right now, we build, we sell, we build, we sell, we build, we sell. And there's a lot of interest from those guys for some buy and holds and to build something to hold. So right now I'm looking for some commercial properties to do, you know, a small mixed use development, something like that. We'll see if that's where we go. That's my present thinking, but as in anything, the numbers have to work. And, you know, that's the trick. I hopefully can continue to build and work in Austin for the foreseeable future. You know, the looming, is there going to be a crash, is always sitting right there. So I just keep my fingers crossed that I can keep building, because I absolutely love it. I love being able to make really beautiful homes that people want to live in.
Awesome.
Lynn, can I ask you a quick question? Can I ask you a question? With regards to the partnership, just to kind of pivot in that, because you just mentioned about partnerships and how you just took a couple years to kind of get, you know, things moving along. Just quick question about that. I mean, partnerships come up a lot in this business, you know, and, you know, Andres and I have seen it, and you have good partners and then you have not so good partners, and that can really, you know, really throw you for a loop. I mean, I can go down a bunch of stories on that topic. So I'm curious for you, not to get into the whole story of it, but, you know, the women listening to this, we often will partner with people because it's just helpful. I mean, you can't be an expert in everything in this business. So knowing what you've gone through without having to go down that in terms of specifics, what would you say to the person listening to this and saying, keep these things in mind if you're dealing, you know, as you're partnering with people, do these things, because the best people to tell you that stuff is usually people that have gone through partnerships that haven't worked. So I'm curious to hear from you, since you mentioned that a moment ago. What would you say to the women listening to this as they partner with women, as they seek to partner with women, or as they get better at partnering with existing, you know, partners? What recommendations would you have if you had to kind of sum up everything you've learned through the experiences you've been through?
Yeah. I mean, I think good business partnerships they're kind of like marriages, even if we don't want to call them that, right? So you've first and foremost have to find somebody that you absolutely trust. And that's tough, because having a friend that you trust is very different than basically intertwining all your finances in your life in such a way. And that will pop up, and I mean, we've all heard the stories, right? So that's going to pop up and do that. I think other than that, you've got to make sure that your vision and your goals are aligned, and your you know, your comfort at risk levels and that sort of thing have to be aligned. So if you've got one partner that wants to go way big and they're willing to go into debt to get it, and the other one who is just happy with something small and they don't ever want to have a whole lot of risk financially, there's going to be conflict there, and it's going to be difficult. So making sure that you're aligned in that, but also not so aligned that you take dangerous risks, right? So if you've got two people that always see the best in everything and are never questioning, that's also a recipe for disaster. So there's all sorts of things like that. So I think, you know, trust and vision and goals are all really big and important. I think a really good lawyer to put the documentation together is underutilized in a lot of ways, because if you form your company correctly, when it's time to exit it, all those things have been thought through, and you can just exit. You know, the way things
meant to be.
Are meant to, right. You don't have to get caught up in, well, you know, you're going to owe me this, you're going to owe me that, when if it was all documented really, really, really well in the beginning, that'll come through. And then I think lastly, I would say, you know, listen to that small voice inside your head. If you get a feeling that something's not right,
listen to it. Just
listen to it. And I think this is a gross generalization, but I think a lot of women are raised and taught to not listen to that small voice in their head. Even if you look to, you know, tiny kids and infants, when they don't want to go to somebody and they start crying, and you're like, oh no, she's a nice lady. And we're put into people's hands. And so we're, you know, that's intuition that we're being told is not right. And so we're not taught to listen to that small voice. And I think that it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Great recommendations. I thought I would ask that because you mentioned it, and it's partnerships are big. So thank you for that. Lynn, you have such a great great suggestions and just so much wealth of knowledge I know on your YouTube channel. So is that where people can learn more about what you're up to on your YouTube channel, or what's the best place for women to connect with you?
Yeah, so they're absolutely welcome to go to my YouTube channel. I owe it some videos. I probably haven't uploaded anything in, maybe a year and a half, but there's more coming. And they can find me there, and that's it. It's under Lynn Currie Builds. So, Lynn, and then I have lyncurriebuilds.com, but it's directly connected to the YouTube channel. So it's just the same information.
Great. All that information we're going to put on our show notes so you guys can check it out. So now, Lynn, we're going to go on our fabulous 3 questions. So the first one is, what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
This one's kind of an easy one, but it's a business book. And it was just kind of the aha moment of not trying to do everything. And that was the E-Myth. And that was, I'm sure most of us have read it. And it was, I realized that I could just make the pies if all I want to do is make the pies. Yeah. So that was about the time that, and I'm a big proponent of DISC, which is kind of one of those strengths and weaknesses, although they wouldn't frame it that way, tests. And so I kind of combine those two in the logic.
Great. Liz is an expert on those tests, right, Liz?
Yeah, I worked many years with another tool called Predictive Index, but it's similar in that, what are the 4 quadrants? And I'm always analyzing everyone. I can't get it out of my head, even though I don't work with it as much anymore.
I bet you know which quadrant I could fall under.
Absolutely. I got
totally.
You back out.
She can. She always comes to me
in a good way, of course.
Right. You know, that person, it is an extroverted and something else. I was like, wow.
Get to the point with that person. Don't go on too long.
So it's great. It's always good. So the second question is, what's the most powerful routine you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question. What routine? So I'm not big on routine. So I will say possibly getting up and working every day. I think for me, it's just making sure I do the fun stuff. Because I have a tendency, I'm able to jump into something and not look up from it and just keep going and keep going. And then what happens is I find that I get somewhere and get really frustrated. And then I realize it's because I've put all this energy into it and I haven't stopped and gone and done something else. So sometimes I have to actually force myself to stop and pick up the phone and call a friend and say, hey, let's go do something. I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I've got to make sure I get myself out there.
And you made a good point about not having a routine. I think that I hate routines where I'm obligated to do that. I think that I have good habits, if you would say, but I agree with you. I want to be free, and I think that's what brings me joy too. So the third question will be, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
Wow. So I'm a huge fan of Ann Richards. I mean, she was for those who don't know, she was governor here in Texas for a fairly short amount of time. Very sharp-tongued, smart, brilliant woman who, if you looked at everything, should have never, ever been able to be elected governor in Texas, just by her politics and by the fact that she was a woman. And she's shaped a lot of things in this state, and I think really showed a lot of people that you could go do something that many people thought she couldn't.
Awesome. I gotta look in because we're all from Jersey, so I'd love to see a successful lady leading this state. We need a lot of help, but that's great. Lynn, thank you so much for being on our show and sharing all your great knowledge. And I highly recommend those listening, check out Lynn's YouTube page. She's got some great how-to videos, putting flooring down. I mean, the things you need to know in order to flip a home, or even if you're doing it in your own home. It's just great stuff. So thanks so much for being on our show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.